What's going on, everybody? Jared Sandler here with you. Time for our Friday Hi-5. Let's start with last night's Thursday night football game. The Rams beat the Patriots. You know, it's funny hearing people say, oh, it's revenge for the Super Bowl. I don't think a single regular season game equates a Super Bowl game. But, if that's how the Rams want to spin it, that's fine. Here's the reality, though. The Rams are legit. The NFC is a big mystery. Are the Saints the best team? The Packers, the Bucks, the Rams, who is it? We know it's not a team in the NFC East. There have been probably 4 or 5 different NFC teams this year that going into a certain week, we've been like, this is probably the best team in the NFC. If the Rams can run the ball the way they did last night it was Cam Akers. They got Malcolm Brown, Darrell Henderson. It looks like Cam Akers is the best of the bunch. It certainly seems like they believe that, and his performance last night supports that. But if they can run the ball, that would be something that they really haven't had as a part of their offensive dynamic since Todd Gurley was really healthy. And that adds a different element. We know what they are defensively. This is a team that can get to the quarterback. It's a team that can stop the run. It's a team that defends the pass really well. The Rams we saw yesterday, I know that New England is not a juggernaut, but that was a pretty good team. I still think that between the Packers, the Saints, the Bucks, and the Rams, a team has not really separated themselves. I'd say that the Seahawks are maybe on the fringe of being in that group. Or maybe you could say the fringe of being out of that group. Defensively, they just seem to be such a mess. And offensively, that offensive line has really, really had problems this year. But last night, the Rams looked pretty good. I still think right now I go with Green Bay as the best team of the NFC with the Saints right behind. I'm not a big believer in Drew Brees, but I am a believer in that New Orleans defense. But I do think that the team that's got the chance to be the most well-rounded going into the playoffs is the Los Angeles Rams. I still really believe that. They just have had some inconsistencies like every other team in the NFC has had. As far as the Patriots, man, people are sitting here, why is Cam Newton the free agent? Why is no one paying him? Oh, he only got paid this. What disrespect for a former MVP. The key word there is former. This guy is not good anymore. If you want a quarterback like Taysom Hill, who can just run the ball a little bit, hey, Cam's your guy. Taysom Hill can throw the ball better than Cam can right now, especially on passes within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. Cam has lost all touch, lost all ability to complete short passes. And it's tough watching that Patriots offense with Cam, because if it's not him running the ball, he's really not good at the other stuff. And I'm curious what Bill Belichick thought when they brought him in. My thought was that they were going to roll with Jarrett Stidham, not because they thought he was special, because that would be their ticket to Trevor Lawrence or, one of these top quarterbacks, Justin Fields. That Jarrett Stidham was that bad that they would go 2-14, 3-13. When they brought Cam in, I gave Bill Belichick the benefit of the doubt, like, hey, maybe they're seeing something that I don't think is out there. But the Cam we've seen is kind of the Cam that I think a lot of us expected. And it's put the Patriots smack dab in the middle of the pack and not in the playoff conversation. And it just this Cam Newton is just not a good football player anymore. All right, let's go to the Rangers. Yesterday, they made 2 acquisitions. I mean, multiple players, but 2 separate maneuvers. The Rule 5 draft, they added Brett DeGuss, a pitcher, fastball slider guy, good strike thrower, would likely have pitched in Double-A last year had there been a full minor league season. He seems to be a really good candidate to stay with the team throughout the year. As you might know, when you acquire a Rule 5 player in the draft, or when you acquire a player in the Rule 5 draft, I should say, they've got to stay with your team the entire year. Otherwise, you have to offer them back to their original team if they don't stay on the major league roster for the entire year. Because the Rangers aren't really competing for a playoff spot this year, this is the perfect type of year to take on a guy like Brett DeGuss and, see if he can sink or swim. And even if he sinks a little bit, you can try and help him and help him withstand that if you believe that there's stuff there that will yield major league production in the future. Nate Lowe was acquired yesterday in a trade with the Rays. The Rangers didn't give up any major league players. They did give up 3 prospects who You ask different people, they're going to tell you which one they like the best. But Alexander Ovalle, Heriberto Hernandez, and the guy that I probably like the best, Oslevis Basabe, what they all have in common, though, is that they're all guys with higher ceilings, but all guys with really low floors. We're not talking about guys who are knocking on the big leagues. There's a lot of room, a lot of time for them to maybe go off course or maybe, you said sink or swim. When you get to AA, AAA, there's that sink or swim. And that's why prospects are a numbers game, because, guys who look great at lower levels, you put them at, the more competitive levels and things kind of change. My point is not that these guys probably were all going to sink. My point is that these are all guys who at this stage in their careers aren't sure things, at any level really. And the Rangers felt like they could upgrade at first base, and they found their first baseman. I don't want to say that Nate Lowe is going to be their first baseman for the next 6 years. They've got him under control for 6 years, but I think the Rangers acquired him with the idea that he potentially could be. This is not a stopgap acquisition. Could it end up being that way, where Nate Lowe ends up being a stopgap because things just don't work out for him and the Rangers feel like they got to go in a different direction? Absolutely, it could. This is not like the Rangers signing some big free agent first baseman who you're certain is going to be here for the next 5 years. But again, the Rangers' intention is not that Nate Lowe's a stopgap. They feel like in Nate Lowe, they've got a left-handed hitter with a smooth swing who's going to get on base at a high rate. Not going to be a guy who blows you away with his batting average, but will get on base. The question with Nate Lowe is, how much power does he have? Some people feel like this is a guy who could hit 25 to 30 home runs. He's got that type of power. Other people wonder if he's just maybe a bigger body who's going to go the other way a lot and hit 15 or so home runs. There's a big difference in those two numbers, right? And so that's going to be an interesting thing with Nate Lowe. Now, what I think is most interesting about the acquisition is it seems to be a vote of confidence for Sam Huff as a catcher. So it looks like the Rangers catching tandem could very well be Jose Trevino and Sam Huff in some sort of equal share, as opposed to what, maybe I had anticipated before the trade, Jose Trevino being the main catcher, Sam Huff ultimately getting most of his opportunities at first base. Yesterday, John Daniels said they're really bullish on Sam Huff as a catcher defensively and his ability to grow. So at least for the time being, Sam Huff's primary responsibilities will be behind the plate, not at first base. It looks like Nate Lowe will be at first base, and for Ronald Guzman, this possibly means the end of the road for him in this organization. He doesn't have any more options remaining. It's going to be a competition, but it looks like a competition that Nate Lowe is going to win. All right, the NBA released their top 100. I should say ESPN released their NBA top 100. Luka Doncic checking in at number 4. It's pretty cool. It's been a while since the Mavericks have had an elite player like that. And I am at the front of the line of Dirk lovers. I want to name my kid Dirk. I name all my kids Dirk. He's my favorite athlete of all time. But there are parts of Luka that are just parts we've never experienced when we had Dirk. Dirk was always one of the best players in the NBA, but he didn't have other NBA players drooling over him. He didn't have LeBron. LeBron and Kobe, those guys respected him. You could tell they respected him, but it seems like, Luka is like the homecoming king type. They're like, oh my gosh, this guy's like awesome, blah, blah, blah. They're in love with this guy. He has got superstar qualities that Dirk, I don't want to say didn't have as a player, but didn't have just the aura. The aura surrounding Luka is different. Now, Luka's ahead of Kawhi Leonard by a spot. Right now, today, would I take Luka or Kawhi Leonard to win a big game? I'd still probably take Kawhi. The defensive side of it, to me, is still huge. But what I think this list suggests is that at the end of the year, we could be talking about Luka in the 4 spot, maybe even higher. He's behind LeBron, who deserves to be number 1, absolutely unequivocally. Anthony Davis, who's number 2. Giannis, who's number 3. I think Anthony Davis is getting lifted up by LeBron. He's a tremendous player. The injuries have maybe changed the trajectory of his career a little bit. I don't know if I would have put Anthony Davis at number 2. I'd probably put Giannis at 2, Kawhi at 3, Luka at 4, Anthony Davis at 5. The thing with Kawhi that Luka doesn't have, and maybe one reason why I'm comfortable ranking Luka ahead of Kawhi, even though I said one game I'd take Kawhi, because the NBA season isn't one game. And I don't know that Kawhi is great in a locker room. I just don't. I think if you look at a lot of what the Clippers' challenges were last year, I think Kawhi is a part of that. I think this I'm a special case and I can do what I want mentality, that doesn't fly. That doesn't fly when you're playing with other studs, or when you're playing with a type of players like Patrick Beverley, the dogs, who are important, essential for you to win a title. Those dogs, they bark, and you love them because they bark. But those dogs who grind, they don't like seeing other guys sit there and like, oh, rest day. They don't like that. And so I think over the course of a season, yeah, I think I'd take Luka for one game. I'd probably take Kawhi right now, but it's really cool seeing Luka in that 4 spot. Dirk is the greatest Maverick of all time. Luka has the potential to be the greatest Maverick of all time. Luka has the potential to be a top 10 player of all time. It's early. He's got to do it over a longer stretch, but that's the type of special talent we have here in Dallas. One other just random note, Jimmy Butler at 12, Bam Adebayo at 13. I've been saying this throughout the offseason, and I'm going to say it again. It's not really that relevant, but it's just something I really believe in. Bam Adebayo is the best player on the Miami Heat. Jimmy Butler got a lot of the shine, a lot of the love. Let me tell you something. When the year's over, Bam Adebayo is going to be a top 10 NBA player, and Jimmy Butler will be outside of the top 15. It's nothing against Jimmy Butler, but that's how good Bam Adebayo is. I do think there's a little bit of recency bias with Jimmy Butler because he had such a good playoff run that I think it's overhyped him a little bit. I think he's a top 20 player, but I do not think he's the best or most important player on that team. All right, want to get into some college football quickly. LSU giving themselves a self-imposed one-year ban. That's kind of comical. They suck this year. It really doesn't matter. If they were to play in a bowl, it would be a junk bowl anyway. The financial implications just aren't there. Listen, I guess, like, does anyone ever say, hey, we suck this year, so we're going to start our ban next year? No one does it. But, if LSU thinks that they're going to get in any favor by giving themselves a one-year ban, do it when you're good. Do it when it would mean something. This means nothing. It's just an eye roller. A lot of people want to hate on the Big Ten because of the way things shaped up at the beginning of the season. I want to give credit to the Big Ten. This is unprecedented, right, this year. I mean, that's the cliche word that we roll our eyes when we hear. It's an unprecedented year, blah, blah, blah. Well, because it's unprecedented, it's tough to make rules on the fly. All right. The Big Ten didn't know what it wanted to do. It didn't start the season at the beginning of the year. Then they changed course. That's okay. I mean, there's no playbook for this. They want to change course. That's fine. They said you got to play a minimum amount of games. Well, now in the middle of the season, as things have played out, they realize that number, that arbitrary number, that number that has zero significance other than it came out of their mouth with no scientific reason for that number. They changed it because they realized that Ohio State is that conference's best shot to get into the college football playoff. And you know what? I heard Joel Klatt say this. They would do it for anyone. They would do it for anyone because the goal of a conference is to support its members. And that's what the Big Ten is trying to do here. If Ohio State would have lost this week, if they would have played a game, whether it was against A&M, Michigan, whomever, they'd still be in the Big Ten title game. So this doesn't change that. If it was Indiana who was sitting there with, without meeting the minimum amount of games, that they were the conference's best chance to get into the college football playoff, they would do the same thing. Heck, Michigan's athletic director, remember, Michigan and Ohio State, they don't like each other. Michigan's athletic director said this is what the conference needs to do and should do. Credit the Big Ten for being flexible in a year in which you need to be flexible. On the flip side, my conference, where my school went or is a part of, USC, the Pac-12, they continue to be the worst-run conference in all of sports. Professional sports, collegiate sports, they're the worst-run organization. Larry Scott is a horrendous commissioner. You don't like Rob Manfred. You don't like Gary Bettman. You don't like Adam. Well, I don't know that many people don't like Adam Silver. You don't like Roger Goodell. Let me tell you something. Those guys are all gods compared to Larry Scott. This guy is an absolute joke. How rigid he remains, all the dumb decisions, the horrible TV deal, everything. The Pac-12 is the worst conference in college sports among those major conferences. And frankly, I don't know how much longer it's going to be considered a power conference because of what is going on in that conference. My school, USC, doesn't belong in that conference. Oregon doesn't belong. Those two schools need to get the hell out of there, get to a power conference because the Pac-12 is sinking its own ship because of their leadership led by Larry Scott. That's our high five for Friday. Have a great weekend.